Book 7.
Book 7.
The Dark Tower.
The Dark Tower.
So we start off Book 7 with Jake and Callahan, the shootout of the Dixie Pig, which they go in and they realize it's the same vampires that were after Callahan. And also the Taheen. It's the shootout, and Jake keeps telling Callahan no more than 6 feet away from me.
Yeah.
They've got to keep a steady distance so they are able to shoot at the maximum efficiency.
Yeah. And let's just reiterate, Jake's 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
This 10-year-old kid is just
a certified gunslinger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A full-on gunslinger.
And that's when Callahan tells Jake, hey, we're not going to be able to handle this. You need to go after Susanna/Mia. And then he takes out the Scorpata and just hypnotizes every single one of the creatures. All of the vampires, the Taheen, they're just focused on this. That's when Jake and Oi are able to go through all of them and enter the kitchen, I believe. That's when they go and Callahan dies. He drops the Scorpata, and one of the vampires goes at him. He shoots 5 rounds. He's got 1 more bullet, and then he shoots himself in the head. Yeah. And then Mia and Susanna separate through Fedek, which is basically like, it's a location, but they do it through a dream-like scenario. It's got this castle in the middle with like a town around it. And that's when we learn that Mia is a god, succubus, incubus, shape-shifting demon thing. And then they go back where Mia and Susanna are locked inside the Dixie Pig basement. And that's when Mia gives birth to Mordred. And he eats Mia alive. Mordred is the son of the Crimson King. It's all red. It's got 2 forms: a baby form, which is kind of normal, that ages a little bit quicker. And a spider form with the baby face, or whatever maturity level it's currently at, on like the butt of the spider.
Yeah, dude.
So,
and it can switch just willy-nilly.
So it eats Mia, and then Susanna is able to shoot at it. It injures one of its legs, and all the guards or whatever that were in the room die from Mordred. And Susanna runs away and meets Jake. Jake and Susanna enter through the door that's in one of the tunnels through the Dixie Pig. While camping out, Mordred kills and eats the Man in Black.
Because the Man in Black was trying to... He had a birthmark on its heel.
Yes.
The same birthmark that Roland had, so he was going to cut that off and kill Mordred and take that to be able to enter the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
That backfired on him big time.
Yeah, because Mordred had some psychic power, so he could tell what the Man in Black was trying to do. He knew his
intentions were, yeah.
But after that, Roland and Eddie meet up with Jake, Oi, and Susanna.
Yes.
No longer Mia. So
and that's the first time that the Quartet's been back together since leaving the Kala, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Characters arrived to thunderclap and kill the Breakers. Which were a group of people that had psychic kinetic abilities that were trying to destroy the beams to collapse the tower. The beams obviously holding it together. And Jake has this same type of power, which they do talk about quite a few times, and they do reference Jake having the same power as the kid from The Shining. Yeah. And then during the end of this fight, after they believe that they have shot and killed all of the Breakers, again, one of the dumbest deaths. One of them's not dead and just shoots Eddie through above the right eyebrow. Yeah. It doesn't kill him instantly. No. He's just in a bed for hours, just dying. Yep. I think I love Stephen King as a writer, but I feel like he needs to work on the impact of deaths in a series.
Well, and that's the thing, I feel like, because Eddie was so close to our hearts at that point. Like, at Book 7, we've spent so much time, we're emotionally connected to these people. And much like real life, it's just something stupid.
And then Susanna is by Eddie's side until he dies, which that is breaking Susanna.
Yeah.
That, I think, was the first time where I was like, yo, that's something that actually made her, like, more real.
Yeah.
Which I think might have been, now just thinking about it and saying it, might have been the reason I didn't care for Susanna. Because how different she was made her not feel real. I couldn't have a connection with her character.
Okay.
And then Roland and Jake go to 1999 to save Stephen King. They know they need to save him because Roland is getting aches and pains all over his body, which he assumes is when Stephen King got run over by a car. Which I thought was cool. Real life events are affecting events in the book.
Right. Because he really did get hit by a car. June 19th, 1999.
And one of Roland's old friend Shimi, which we found out was one of the breakers.
Love Shimi though.
He shows up and creates one of the doors.
Well, and he always got picked on, right? Because he was kind of
on
Leonardo DiCaprio and What's Eating Gilbert Grape, like super lovable and cute, but everyone in the town kind of made fun of him, and he was the joke of the butt of the joke. And Roland's an awesome guy and taking care of people like that.
In another weird death, Shimi creates the door. We're like, too much psychic power, dies. And so Jake and Roland, 1999, save Stephen King, and they find that he's walking this trail to go to his wife and kids at the pond nearby. And there's this reckless driver that is going extremely fast. And eventually, I thought it was funny, Jake made the driver have to pee, so he pulled over.
Yeah.
Took a pee. So that was enough time for Roland and Jake to catch up. And then the driver got back in his car, and right as he was about to hit Stephen King, Jake tackled Stephen King and blocked him from the path. But in turn, Jake was run over.
Yeah. And I feel like good on Stephen King, because that guy really did hit him with his van. I think he was drunk. In real life, Stephen King bought the van that he hit him with, and I think he blew it up. But Stephen King, obviously, I don't know if he hates the man or what. If he hates the guy,
I do.
But now we do, because instead of killing Stephen King, you killed a 10-year-old gunslinging little Jake, and now we all hate this man.
Yeah. So just after being run over, always says the most iconic line. What is it? They can't tell exactly which he said, either by Jake or I ache.
Yeah, he says I ache, and it could be either one, but either way, just those two words are devastating.
And I think Roland, this is probably the scene where he shows the most emotion. He had just taken this kid in as his son, because they had a long adventure together, but just right before this they had to talk, and they kind of saw each other as father and son.
Yeah, which he'd already lost him once, and he wasn't going to do that again.
Yeah. Roland buries Jake near the crash site, and he makes a lady promise that she will plant roses near his grave.
R.I.P. Jake.
So Roland and Oi rejoin with Susanna through the door in the Dixie Pig. They're able to just make their way there, since it is the same time period, 1999. The remaining quartet travel for weeks through the freezing Badlands, and the quartet meet Dandolo. And they go to this cabin out of the group of them that has lights on. They go in and they find a guy named Dandolo. And Dandolo, they find out, is a comedian. And Roland and Susanna are just laughing at his jokes. And then Susanna has to go to the restroom right quick. So Susanna is in the bathroom. She can hear Roland laughing a lot through Dandolo's jokes. And eventually that laughing turns into wheezing, and then into screaming. And then she goes out and she sees Roland just kind of gasping for air. And Dandolo is still rattling off jokes. Clearly trying to kill him, just suffocate him. Then Susanna shoots him in the head, and then Roland and Susanna and Oi all make their way through the house, and they go eventually down into the basement, and they see a guy, a skinny little boy, they say around 16, locked in a cage in the basement, and they find out his name's Patrick, and his tongue was cut off. So he's got no way to really communicate with them, so they give him a pad of paper and some pencils that strangely don't have any erasers on them, which will be important later. And Susanna eventually finds a little Ziploc bag full of just erasers taken off from the pencils that Dandelo had. And then they discover with Patrick drawing on the paper that he is fantastic at it, which is super important later, really finishing off the ending.
Which, and it's weird too, because he was such a minor like character in Insomnia, because Roland at one point acquires a copy of Insomnia, sees the red and the white, you know, this is the author, this is the Crimson King is the red, and the sign of Eld is the white, and that's clearly important, and then he just kind of dismisses it. And then at the end you see a quick shot, and it's a weird book about aliens and ribbon cutting and killing people, and people can't sleep. It's very odd, but at the end it's just a random kind of, oh, there's this little boy, he's drawn the gunslinger.
And then they find a robot that was kind of a helper to Dandelo named Stuttering Bill. Again, a reference to the It book,
which is such a treat.
And then eventually making their way through the path of the beam, and they see a pack of buffalo off in the distance, and Susanna's watching it, and then she suddenly sees that they're a lot closer. And then she looks at Patrick, who is just drawing them a lot closer, and then she comes to the realization that whatever he's drawing will either come to reality. And then eventually Susanna is kind of just longing to go home, so she just asks Patrick, since she found out about his new power, to ask him to create one of the doors she can go through. Then Patrick eventually does, and Susanna says goodbye and then goes through the door, which we'll talk about later, about like what I felt it really meant. And then later on, when Roland, Oi, and Patrick are all sleeping during the night, Mordred finally comes back in the spider form and goes to pounce at Roland, but Oi awakens quickly to this.
Good boy.
And tries to jump out and get him, but then Mordred grabs him, and then Oi is thrown into a tree, impaling him. Which does give Roland enough time to get up and shoot Mordred, killing him.
Makes you hate Mordred that much more. Oi was the best boy.
Which Oi was the last bit of the original quartet. Which was just, it was sad for me, but it made me feel happier that Roland was starting the journey and ending the journey the same. Alone, even though Patrick is still with him. Patrick,
he's not quartet material.
Yeah, he's just kind of hanging on for the ride right now.
Yeah. Well, and Roland mentions that so many times, right? And he's even teased with, "You'll lose everyone that you've ever cared about. You lost Elaine and Cuthbert. You lost and
Susan."
We've been teased with that the whole time, and we've just held out hope the entire time that maybe they'll survive.
Yeah. And then Roland and Patrick are finally making their way through, and they finally get to the Dark Tower. And they find that the Crimson King is on the second balcony, and he's just banging on the door trying to get in.
He's furious. He's livid.
And then the Crimson King finally spots them and throws a sneech at them, finally coming back into play after Wolves of the Kala. Roland grabs Patrick and gets them behind a large rock, and they're at a stalemate for hours. The Sneeches are curving around the rock.
Yeah, he's figuring out a way to put a little English on it so that they'll hook his way. And
then Roland's shooting him out of the air, but finally dwindling his supply of bullets.
You can't go on like that forever.
And then Roland gets the idea to get Patrick to draw a picture of the Crimson King and then erase him, getting rid of him forever. Color the eyes of the Crimson King, and then he finally erases everything but the eyes. But finally, Roland goes towards the tower, and Patrick just turns around and
He
leaves.
goes home.
Yeah,
Yep.
he just starts walking home, which I felt it was odd to have a character come into the story, defeat the main bad guy, and just leave.
Yeah.
I felt like that shouldn't have been such an important role for a character that had maybe, 50 pages.
Yeah.
Just with him being there.
Yeah.
And then while Roland's walking towards the tower, he is yelling every single name of the person that he's lost.
Which is such a powerful scene.
It is probably the best scene in the entire series.
Well, and we've spent so much time and effort. We feel like we've exhausted ourselves too on this adventure with him getting the tower, and we are all finally there.
Then Roland finally enters the tower, which in the original was the ending to the Dark Tower. But then after this, we go back to Susanna, who returns to New York in an alternate world where Eddie and Jake are alive and brothers.
Was it 1980? And was it New Year's Eve time?
It is right before Christmas.
Christmas season.
Because Jake's wearing the Merry Christmas and Eddie's wearing the I Heart Nuzzle lot, which is just their
the other
cola
world's
brand.
Coke. Yeah.
And then Eddie, Jake both vaguely remember or feel like they have a connection with Susanna. And Susanna just does remember them. Just from going through the door, she knows exactly what's happened. And then they just live their life together.
Yeah.
And it's given in the book saying, like, hey, they could or could not meet a dog-like creature, gold-rimmed eyes, that has a human-like speech when it barks.
Yeah.
Which, obviously, reference to Oi.
Which feels good to have the crew together again. And Eddie's been dead for a little while, so it made my heart happy to see Eddie
just finally
joyful and happy, and Jake's there, and
and then it finally returns back to Roland in the tower. And at this point in the book, Stephen King writes a message just saying to the audience that this may not be the ending they were looking for. So when Roland's climbing the tower, every floor he enters, there's a door marked with a person's name that he's met through his journey, and inside are pieces or just a feeling of their character. Each floor represents a person, and then Roland eventually is getting tired of going through all these floors. He's starting to not really care, and then he's just going through the door, going through the room, and going to the next one.
Yep.
And then he finally reaches the top where he finds a door marked with his name, and then he opens it, and then he's suddenly filled with the realization that this has happened countless times. He has journeyed to the tower, and he has come to this same thing, and then he is suddenly he falls and just reappears where the journey started at the first book, which is just really cool. He hears the voice of God telling him maybe this time will be different, and in his hand he has the horn of Eld, which he lost at the Battle of Jericho. And then just at the end, Roland's memory is wiped, and then the last sentence of the book is the same one that started the first. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Just beautiful.
It's a perfect line. It gives you the characters, the setting. It gives you the action. It gives you the tension. That one sentence
just
says so much. It's almost an entire story in one sentence.
Just phenomenal.
Yeah, incredible.
And I just want to know, do you personally think that Roland is ever going to end the loop, even with the Horn of Eld?
I would like to think that. I would like to think that one day, my favorite cool, blue-eyed, long, tall, and nasty finally gets his satisfaction. Then do you want to talk about your theory?
I was wondering, when right before Susanna goes to the door, Roland talks about, hey, this can be very dangerous. We don't know if a door created from drawing will actually lead you to where you need to go. And he talks about how it could have taken her to a land outside the universe, the total darkness, where all of the biggest, meanest monsters lie. I kind of envisioned that that's what actually happened, and then going back to New York was just her meeting back up with everyone that's dead. I think they are all dead.
That would make sense. That's That's a heavy, sad thought, but I mean, you can't get around the horrific deaths of the pointless death of Eddie, the tragic, just infuriating death of Jake, and the super sad little poor Oi. Like, you want them all to be together and happy again, but the chances are, I think that's a very good point. Yeah. I think you might be right. Chances are they're probably all dead. I do believe
that wraps up this little podcast.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you once again, Jarrod Pinkerton.
Thank you. What's your teacher's name?
Mrs. Hendrix.
Mrs. Hendrix, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
I'll take my leave.
Yeah. Door on the left, past secretary.
Ow! Get the coos.